Please enjoy this talk given at the Austin Center for Spiritual Living, where we live and teach the principles of science of mind and spirit. For more information, visit austincsl.org.
Good morning to you once again. Before we get started in what I'm going to be talking about here this morning, and it's on the theme of motivation. And motivation is something that begins within. I was sent a group of little sayings by somebody. I got in the email just recently. And a couple on here that are very relevant, I think, to where we're going this morning. And then there are a couple of others that I just kind of think are amusing. And so I want to give you one of those. Some minds are like concrete, thoroughly mixed up and permanently set. Isn't that neat? And then quit griping about your church. If it was perfect, you couldn't belong. But the ones that really give us a start here this morning are kind of a segue into what I'm going to be talking about is this. Don't give God instructions. Just report for duty. Isn't that neat? You know, I had a good friend, a minister, that used to use the expression, said, just show up and take your assignment. And I like that because so many of us are here to tell God how to do things, when the fact of the matter is, let's show up sometime and take the assignment. Yes, we have choice in order to be able to direct our course in life. That's the way we're created. But also, there's a guiding power within us if we just allow it to express in our life. And this is directly in line with an awful lot of what I'm going to be talking about, in line with what I'm going to be I always talk about. And then the other thing that is so powerful to me is the task ahead of us is never as great as the power behind us. Do we really believe that? On occasion, I have been asked by somebody who's approached me and said, Richard, I would like very much for you to come to our group, a civic group, our group, or whatever, and give a motivational talk. And I look at him and I say, sorry, I can't do that. I said, what do you mean you can't do that? I understand you're a motivational speaker. I says, no, I'm not a motivational speaker, if by that you mean I'm supposed to go there and motivate you. Have any of you ever gone to sales meetings to be motivated? And your sales manager or whoever the guest presenter is gets up and gives you all of this stuff and gets you all hyped up and you're ready to go. You go out and you sell great for the first 4 hours in the first day. And then by next week, you have to go back to another motivational meeting. Well, that's really the way that is. And I tell them, no, I says, I cannot motivate anybody. I can only hope to inspire people by something that I may say, might trigger an awareness within them or a new idea that may help to change their perception of things. That's a lot of words to say what I do, but it's really simply to present an idea that may resonate at some level within. And then out of that, there can become that which gets our moving. Motivation, simply, there are a lot of definitions. I looked them up. I have a whole sheet full at home, and I decided not to come and bore you with some of the motivations, the definitions of motivation. But I thought about it, and I think that motivation is just what gets us to do what we want to do. And it's that simple. And the realization that I've come to is that everyone is motivated. Everyone is already motivated. And if you don't know the effects of motivation in your life, look at your life. Because you see, I think there's what we might call positive motivation and negative motivation. That is motivation that moves you to do things that add value to your life, to the lives of others, to the context within which you live. And then there's motivation that kind of extracts it, or at the very best is just neutral, normal, does nothing. You say, well, how can that be motivation? That's to get you moving. Well, a lot of people need to get moving or want to get moving to do nothing. Or they get so busy, they're moving in so many different directions that nothing results as a result of that. Who was it? I was Marcia and I, my wife and I. Where is she? She's somewhere here. Oh, there she is, wifey. We're talking just the other day, and I quoted to her something that popped into my mind that I was trying to think about the other night, and it finally came to me. It took a few days, but it came to me. And that was a quotation I think that Yogananda made, Paramahansa Yogananda, the Indian saint that came to the United States in 1920. He wrote the book, Autobiography of a Yogi. And it goes something like this. He says, your kind of laziness is to be busy all the time. Think about that. Doesn't that grab you? Now, no one can be motivated. And yet I think everyone is self-motivated to some extent. You see, we always do what we would rather do than not do. And boy, would I argue with this at various times in my life. We always tend to do what we would rather do than not do. Every action that we take is some kind of a personal response or reaction to something that's going on in our life to fill some kind of a need or a desire. I remember a story that I heard about a young man. He was just out of school, and he was a smaller presence, a smaller frame, but a wiry young guy, and he wanted to go to work, and he heard that they were hiring down on the docks, that they needed men to load this particular ship. And so he went down and he talked to the head of the stevedores, and he says, I want to work. I hear you're looking for men to load this ship. And there were guys that were working there. And he says, yes, we are, but you'll never cut it. You're just too small and frail. And he says, I can handle anything that you have. And he kept bugging the boss. And the boss said, okay, you see that pile of anvils over there? Big anvil that, you know what anvils are, and the big steel things that blacksmiths work on. He says, load those. You go over and start loading those. And he turned it back to his clipboard, and the young man went off. And the next thing you know, the boss hears this big splash. And he turns and he looks, and he noticed that the boy had fallen into the drink between the dock and the ship from the gangplank where he was loading. And he come bubbling up to the surface, and he says, throw me a line, help, throw me a line. And then blah, 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 he went down again, and he comes up again, and he says, so help me, either you throw me a line or I'm going to drop this damn anvil. Now, that's motivation. And sometimes I think the point that we have, that we want to make with something like this, is that sometimes we can push ourselves to the point, be motivated to do something that grows out of an obsessive compulsive desire to accomplish things and compromise ourselves. And I'm not talking about that, but I think it's wonderful to be motivated, to have whatever that is in us that is some kind of a response to life to fulfill some kind of a need. How do we motivate ourselves positively? We know the negative motivations. We've seen those things. They're usually involved in avoidance and fear and that kind of stuff. But how do we motivate ourselves positively? Well, I think positive self-motivation begins with a transformation of our attitude, or a change of our attitude. And our attitude is a combination of various elements. It's what we think, what we feel, what we do, how we behave, how these all come together to give us an attitude that allows us to be clearly focused on something important in our life, and then to apply that. But in being motivated to do something, we need to be convinced, I think, that the benefits that are going to come as a result of what it is we want to experience far outweigh the price that we're going to pay for it. And that makes sense. And let me go back just a little bit. Years ago, when I was not in the ministry too long, I mean, maybe 10 or 15 years. I've been in it for 36 years now. But I had the opportunity to happen, for whatever the reason, be in a context where I was dealt with a lot of people, some of them my very close friends, that were alcoholic. And then some that got into drugs. And then some of you here may be able to relate to some of this yourself. And I wanted to learn as much as I could about this. I was asked to participate in an intervention, so I went to some training on that. And the next thing you know, I started studying about it, and I wanted to learn more and more. And in my studies, it's interesting, I came to the conclusion that the addict, the alcoholic, the overeater, there are all kinds of different kinds of addictions, vacuum cleaning addiction, washing your hands too much addiction, all of these things. I kind of began to get the idea that whoever has this kind of compulsion, whatever one it happens to be, they really must feel that the addiction is worth whatever the price is that they're paying. And I studied John Bradshaw, and he's long gone now, I guess, but this is many years ago, and he was an alcoholic. He was a Catholic priest that finally left the priesthood, and then he became very active in the alcoholic community, the AA community. And he had a definition that I like very much. So let me see if I can remember it. He says, addiction is the obsessive compulsive attachment to something without which we don't feel we can survive. Think about that. Now, that may be pretty extreme. I can say, well, I can survive. Well, the obsessive compulsive attachment to something that we don't think we can do without. And that's really it. And you may not totally agree with that, and if you don't agree with that, that's fine. But take it and look at that and ask yourself, are there obsessive compulsive drives that I have that are inhibiting my ability to be able to be fully expressed in this life? And I think there are. Wow, is that a judgment on every one of you, isn't it? Well, not so much a judgment, I think, as an observation of people in my experience, and that includes me. I think that's a primary problem in civilization. The time when we finally overcome anything to which we are attached is the time when we are free, we are open. Then we can move into a full sense of the reality of who we are, which are, each one of us is a God child made in the image and likeness that made everything else. But setting that aside, you may not like that broad categorization of you, but the change in lives come when we realize that the cost is just too great. You see, this change of attitude, the change of awareness, it sets us on a more useful course, a more positive course. And one of the problems is we get into, and I talked a little bit about this last week, we get into classifying our behaviors as good or bad. And that traps us. And if you remember what little bit I talked about it last week, I'm going to elaborate on some more this morning here, that when we start classifying things as good or bad, oftentimes this causes us to avoid whatever the issue is about which we're making that judgment. You see, if we look at something, say, in ourselves as this is bad, then what we've done is we don't want to associate with that is bad. And so it's like we encapsulate it over here and it doesn't get dealt with. If we just change the terminology that we use to examine whatever the incidents are in our life, like, for instance, the terms I used last week. Stop looking at things as good and bad and think of useful and non-useful. That which adds value and that which maybe doesn't or extracts value. Do you see the difference there? Because to think in terms of useful or non-useful does not have a moral connotation associated with it, where bad or good does. You are morally okay. You are not morally okay. That creates such a separation. But This is useful and this is not useful. Now, this allows us to look at what's going on. And what you do, what you observe may be faulty. Maybe all kinds of mistakes that are involved in this. But there's the realization also that I, as a person, am okay. So I made a mistake. So what? And as you begin to understand this, you can extend that same kind of consideration to other people. And it becomes so much easier to be able to evaluate situations clearly and look at the positive and the negative of it from a standpoint of not good or bad, but what is useful and what is not useful. What adds value? What doesn't add value? And out of that comes a kind of self-motivation, that something that gets you to move toward that which it is you want to experience in your life. And the reason that it leads to this kind of self-motivation is that shorn of the judgments that we so often carry with us, we begin to see that there's meaning and purpose in virtually everything that we do. And that gives you focus. One of my favorite 5-letter words, focus. Now, another part of all this is another word that is a problem to some people. And that word is the responsibility. Have you ever heard that word before? You see, is truly taking responsibility for your life. And oftentimes if you categorize things in the manner that I was talking about, good or bad, evil or not evil or whatever, it's hard to move in to the kind of responsibility that you need, where you own it, then you can deal with it. But a lot of times that allows you to just separate yourself from it. You create avoidance mechanisms. But in this taking a responsibility, first of all, you have the right and the responsibility to choose what you want to do with your life. And there may be a little feeling of resistance among some of you when you look back at your life and you realize that, if my mother or father didn't do this, or the teachers didn't say that, or that damn minister that I had when I was going to the XYZ church over here had treated me a little bit different, I wouldn't be... If you can realize that much, then you're already beyond it. So don't use that as an excuse. You have the right and the responsibility to choose what you want to do with your life. God gave you free will. Free will within the bounds of your own capabilities, within the bounds of your own potential, your skills and your talents. You say, well, with God everything is possible. Yes, everything is possible that's possible for you. We each have skills and talents. And my talents are different than your talents. And I have absolute choice in how I'm going to pursue the development of my talents and skills in order to be able to optimize my experience of life. And that's what I mean when I say within the capabilities within the bounds of my own capabilities. Now, I'm allowed to make mistakes in my life. I can scream and I can cuss and I can steal and I can cheat. Or on the other hand, I can help, I can support, I can be there to help uplift people and encourage them. And I can change my mind in any of this. That's the choice. I can change my mind and do something else. And this is the divine gift of choice. It's always mine. It's always yours. And you know something? It'll not always be right. I said I wasn't going to talk about right and wrong, but that's okay. And you know what I mean. In other words, you're going to make mistakes. You have that divine gift. You're going to make mistakes. But what you do and what you experience out of this is only going to be flawless, let's say, or free of mistakes, or right at your present level of awareness. And when I say that, when I talk about awareness in this sense, I'm talking about the degree to which you are aware of the truth of who you really are. your true nature, that image likeness of God that you are, and the implications of that. And the more we get an insight in the possibilities, the unlimited possibilities that are there for us, grow in awareness of that, the more we can begin to draw those into our life simply by being aware of them. Isn't that amazing? You know, a good command to give a friend of yours sometime, if he or she is doing something stupid, is just to say, wake up, or stop it. We talked about that recently, didn't we? And you say, oh, but can't you give me some mystical set of words or mantra that is going to conjure up the spirit of Guru Dudu from out there in the universe somewhere, going to come in and transform our life? No, it won't happen. You make the choice and the transformation occurs within you. And as we begin to realize this, our awareness really has to do with the degree to which we know our own God-likeness. Then we realize that we are, in a sense, always doing the very best that we can under the circumstances. I had a teacher, a Sufi teacher. We talked a little bit about this in my class last Thursday night. He was a Sufi, and a variety of other kinds of things he incorporated into his system. And he made the comment one time that anything that a person does, when that person does it, it is right, proper, and justified. Now, think about that. Boy, did that challenge me. Did I want to argue with that? Argue with it, okay, but think about it. The key is, whatever a person chooses to do in that moment is right, proper, and justified. He may change his mind 10 minutes later, but in that moment. So in a sense, we really are doing the best that we can under the circumstances, aren't we? But when we can understand that, we can forgive ourselves because we do have the choice to be able to change our mind about things and stop beating on ourselves for our mistakes or for our inability to live up to the potential that we know we have within us and that we continually fall short of that. My younger son, which is now 53 years old, I remember when he was a teenager one time, he had done something, and he was always one of these very self-critical kids. I don't know where that came from. And he still is, to some degree. But really, you know, it was hard for him to acknowledge his gifts, and he's so clever and so smart, and except for that self-critical, he takes after me in all of those other ways. But he did something, and he did it very well, and I was just so pleased, and I complimented him about it, and he looked at it and he says, "But Dad, I didn't give it my best." I didn't quite know what to say. I probably gave him some words like some kind of pablum, you know, well, that's okay, next time try your best or try harder or something. But the fact of the matter is now, I would look at him and I would just say, stop that. Take the compliment. You did well. Acknowledge yourself. I wouldn't say stupid, but I sure feel like saying stupid. Do you see what I mean? How many times do we do that? How many times do we fall short of really acknowledging what it is that we are doing? Let's stop beating on ourselves. Let's stop bemoaning the fact that we made a mistake. Mistakes are wonderful if you use them. Mistakes provide us the opportunity to be able to wake up, to expand our awareness, to be able to release a lot of the emotional resistance and the suppressed stuff that we hold on to so much, like guilt and self-blame, those kinds of things. You own it. Take responsibility for it and move on. We're never going to be fully free until we accept full responsibility for our life and our actions and bring into play some self-forgiveness. And this means responsibility for every word, every thought, every deed, every decision, every action that we've taken. You know, we're going to pay the price for those things or reap the benefits for every one of them. And we learn and we grow according to the nature and the consequences of our actions in life. In wrapping this up, I just want to say this kind of simply. Nothing that we do is right or wrong, good or bad. There's only that which adds value and takes value. Now, I know some of you can say there is evil. I've seen evil. I know, and I agree with you. But get the idea in a general sense. Nothing I do is right or wrong or good or bad. But there can be that which is useful and that which is not useful. There is that which is going to add value. There is that which is going to actually take value away from a system or context, something we're dealing with. And this is very useful terminology. It turns your mind around and opens you to be able to look at what's going on in your life without judgment. How can I encourage more of being able to express and live my life in this way? Well, there's some very simple things you can do. You can ask yourself some questions, and I want to leave you with just a few questions here. Actually, they're all pretty much the same question, or maybe two questions, but I'll go through them all. First of all, when you get ready to undertake some endeavor, and this is the key, to stop. When you want to do something, just don't spontaneously jump out there and start doing it before thinking about it. At least think about, what is it that I need to think about? That sounds silly, but I think you know what I mean. So very often we react to situations to do. Let's stop and say, okay, is there something to think about this? Is this a useful thing to do? Is this going to add value? And a corollary to that really is, will it contribute to my well-being and the well-being of others? Will it support others in their process of life? Those are two questions, but it's really the same question. Another one is that, does it fit into the context of the flowingness of life, the natural laws as I understand the natural laws? You say, oh, wait a minute, I'm not a scientist. I don't know that much about that. You know what I'm talking about. There are certain natural laws. If I go over and step on your toe accidentally, I'll stand back and I'll look and I'll say, oh, I'm so sorry. And you'll say, oh, well, that's okay. But you're pretty clumsy to step on my toe. That's one thing. The natural law involves several different kinds of responses, doesn't it? If I step on your toe or you step on my toe and I look at you and say, you stupid, clumsy ox. See, that's another thing altogether. We look at what you're doing, think about a little bit what you're doing, and in this process, try to understand whether or not what you're doing is consistent with natural laws. You know, if you bring love into a situation, you're going to experience love out of that situation a lot more easily than if you bring antagonism and bitterness into whatever the interaction happens to be. You're almost always going to get a reaction of the same kind. So, is it in harmony with the natural laws as you understand them? And this final question, there are really a couple of questions, but I put it into one. What is the price I must pay? And am I willing to take the consequences? Now let me summarize that just once again, because there are really two questions here. Is what I'm proposing to do useful? Does it add value to me and the circumstances? And the results that are apt to come out of this have a certain price. Am I willing to take the consequences of what I pay to do that, what I've given to it? You see, by asking these kinds of questions of yourself, what you're doing is you're taking conscious control of your life and your affairs right now. You're awake. You're enhancing your awareness. And you grow into the awareness that you are more accountable, that you are the only one that's accountable for your life. And out of this, you learn what it is to get, that's going to get you to do what you do in life. And that's motivation. That's where motivation is rooted. It's that drives you. It's the reason behind you doing what you do in life. And the biggest thing you learn from this, that it stems from within you. No one else. You see, there is a God presence, a spark, that spark of divinity that's at the center of every one of us. And it's constantly pushing on our consciousness saying, I'm here for you. Open up and let me express. It is constantly urging us, prompting us to be let loose in our life. Dr. Ernest Holmes has the statement that he says, I like very much. It's one of the most challenging statements that I've ever come across, and I'm still challenged by it. And that is, God in me, as me, is me. God in you, as you, is you. Let's have a little prayer, shall we? Let's quiet ourselves. Know that there is this one power, this one presence, this one essence, this one intelligence, this one mind. There is one life. That life is God. That life is my life now. It is a perfect life. And what this life is, on this magnificent scale, this unlimited scale, this infinite scale of things, I am in my particular expression in this experience that I'm having now. What that life is my life expressing as me. So all that God is the potentiality and possibility for me because it resides within me. I'm connected with it all. I live and move and have my being within this field of unlimited possibilities and opportunities, and so does everyone else here. It is in that realization that I know I can experience the wholeness of my being. I don't have to be healed. All I need is to awaken to the natural harmonies of the universe, of the divinity itself, and recognize their existence within me. And then I'm made whole in my expression. Now, I want to take a little bit of time and for you to do a little bit of individual work for yourself, as we did last week, and I do occasionally here, lead you in this. I want you to pick one particular incident or issue or problem or whatever it is that you're dealing with. Some desire that you're seeking to be able to get moving on in your life in a very positive way. Recognizing that the power behind it is always God. Just pick that and look at it for a moment. Don't do anything with it. Just look at it and define it in your mind. And I'm going to do the same for my life. Okay. Do you have that fixed in mind, whatever that is? It may be a healing for a friend. It may be the need you have for some kind of an expression. It may be a new job you're looking for. It may be a personal healing, a relationship problem or issue, whatever that is. Now, in your mind, Create a scene, a picture. Let it be a moving picture, if you will. And if you cannot visualize in this way, that's okay. Formulate the words that imply the fulfillment of whatever that desire is. What does it look like? That desire fulfilled. Now take a deep breath and shift your awareness just a little bit. You've looked at it. You have seen what it looks like. What does it feel like to you to have that desire fulfilled? Now tell yourself silently, thank you, thank you, thank you. And I say, thank you, Mother, Father, loving God. I know that what we have done here is to bring together our consciousness of the wholeness of all and how each of us may have particularized our own desire. There is but one life. That life is God. That life is perfect. That life is the life of each one of us. And it is that same energy, creativity, and intelligence and love that permeates every aspect of our individual expression of life within the one life. This is what healing is about. This is what wholing, making whole is about. I accept the innate wholeness of each one of us here and rejoice that this is so. I feel that love. I know that it's so. And together we declare, and so it is.